This is Jordan from Wild Wild Tech. Pop quiz, Joshua. Can you tell me what song this is from? Dun 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 dun.
It was Ice Ice Baby. No, wait, it was Under Pressure. Yeah.
Well, that's the thing. Can you tell the difference? On this episode of Wild Wild Tech, we'll be looking at what makes music unique and how copywriting music protects and hinders musicians.
We'll be talking to two people who are using artificial intelligence to create billions of melodies to try and thwart music copyright laws.
The big question is music copyrightable at all? If all it is a series of notes placed in different orders, all of which can be figured out by computers.
Well, I guess you'll have to listen to this episode of Wild Wild Tech to see if they have it all figured out. Subscribe for free to Wild Wild Tech on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.
You are listening to Any Given Sunday, a part of the Dead End Podcast Network. Please subscribe to our podcast on Apple, Spotify, Google, and all other podcasting services. Please make sure you check out Dead End Hip Hop, Dead End Sports, Dead End Gaming, Is the Mic Still On, Chris Platt's Strictly Hip Hop and Hoops Talk, and a host of other shows on our podcast network. Thank you for listening and enjoy the show. You are listening to Any Given Sunday for Sunday, August 23rd, 2020. I'm your host, Manny Brown. What's up, everybody? Glad to be back with another episode of the podcast. Hope you guys had a happy, safe, blessed week. My guest this week, a returning guest. It's been a year. Man, it's actually been a year and a half since we last had him on the show. So it's been a minute. Weekend. Yeah, man, it's been a minute. But he's a very busy man. We're glad that he's given us some time on the show. To purvey the scene of wrestling with us. Mr. Cameron Hawkins, of course, contributor for PW Chores. He's podcast host, writer, does everything over there. He's also got his own podcast, the South Congress podcast, very successful show. And he's also got a new project that he's working on, the Black Wrestling Coalition, that he'll tell us more about, I'm sure. Also writes for Fansided. I mean, the man is a busy man. I mean, he's one of the hardest working men in show businesses. So, Mr. Cameron, welcome back to the show.
Not that I brag about the things that I do, but when I complain loudly about the things that I do, I got to give you credit for that, because when I get to tell people about like the weekend that kind of changed everything, it was definitely WrestleMania weekend, and one of the things that I did that weekend was your show. And it just kind of that was the point where it was like, well, clearly I'm like entrenched in this stuff. And so from here on out, this is the last time you can complain. This is the last time you get to say it's too hard. This is the last time you get to say it's taking up too much time, because you're in a position where people want to hear what you have to say. And so from here on out, you just rock with it. So yeah, I got to thank you for having me on that weekend. That was the turning point in most of this stuff, man. And so it was great to sit down and talk shop with you and just kind of, build from that point. Absolutely.
Well, I appreciate that, my brother. It's an honor to have you on, as always. Did I mention he's a Twitter shit talker extraordinaire as well? So I forgot to leave that out in the introduction. How could I?
Somebody told me they'll be in Texas next weekend, and if I want to see them, I can see them. I was like, oh, okay. I didn't know it was that deep. Okay,
is that deep? Is that deep? Huh? Okay.
Uh-huh.
Hey man. Some people get emotional on Twitter, bro. People get emotional on Twitter, man.
Like real ones, and so they should probably chill out.
Right, like, yeah, but the idea that like obviously you're going to Texas for a reason, that you're going to take time out of your schedule to go find a person on Twitter that
Sure. And get smoked.
On top of that, yes, exactly. On top of that, whatever.
Yeah,
hey, God bless this individual. God bless him. Yeah. But what's going on? With you, man? It's been a year and a half, bro. First and foremost, you listeners get mad because I bring up COVID every time at the beginning of the show, but it's a part of our lives, man. It's the new normal, man. It's every day for us, man. So, how has COVID been treating you over the last 5 months? Over 5 months now. How's your family? How's your health? How's everybody your side of the world, man?
Yeah. Well, first, the family is good. I live in Austin. My mother and my stepfather live in San Antonio. My sister lives in Memphis. And so it was already a situation where a lot of our communication is text. And we typically get together like holidays, but that's kind of it. But we talk regularly. We talked regularly before we had to be in the house. So everybody's doing all right. You know, my sister, works for a paper company in Memphis, right? You work for a paper company in Memphis and you have your MBA. A lot of times you're the only black person in the office. And so COVID happened and, that's when Breonna Taylor happened. And that's when the protests and stuff are happening. So, she got white coworkers coming up to her all the time, asking her about that, about George Floyd, and she had to get out of town. So she actually came home for like a week and a half, right?
I'm not the spokesperson. I'm not the spokesperson for black people, ladies and gentlemen.
Exactly. So that was probably like the hardest thing was seeing her kind of deal with that. But as far as COVID goes specifically, man, like everybody stayed safe. Everybody's been responsible. So yeah, the fam was good. The fam was good. With me, it was, I think sometimes people get the social media stuff kind of confused. Like, I love to have a good time and I'm always out being social, but when they shut stuff down, like they shut me down. Like I was not one of those people who was like, no, I still need my Sunday fun day. Like, no, I still need my bars. No, I still need to like be out and social. It was like, nah, like this is bigger than me. This is bigger than all that. So, me and my man Peanut, who were out there all the time, like, you record the podcast, you go out, you do your mimosa thing, you kicking it with people, and, that's the weekend. We shut all that down, man, like immediately, because it was like, this is life or death, and this is people we care about, and, we can't preach us doing things one way and how people should be and totally live another way. So, it was a shock to have to change our social lives, but it was something we understood. So, they've been hard. You find ways to scratch that itch, I'll say. Right. But
yeah, absolutely.
In a safe way. In a less than 10 people way. In a social distancing way. So yeah, it's been all right. It's been an adjustment, but everybody's good. And our mentals are good. So, that's what's important.
That's what's up, man. Glad to hear that. Are you proud of the way Texas, specifically Austin, has behaved themselves throughout the pandemic? I always like to ask this of folks. That's why I always ask, because I always ask different folks. Because out here in the Pacific Northwest, I can honestly say, man, people have taken it serious. You don't go nowhere. I can honestly say that everywhere I go, 90% of people, 95 have masks. Of course, you're always going to have your outliers. You're always going to have, but I mean, even restaurants, even bars, people are taking it seriously. People are engaged and trying to do the right thing. How is it in Austin? I'm assuming by your response that has not been the case. So just tell me more about that.
So, Manny, remind me, I can cuss on this show, right?
Oh yeah, go ahead. Do you think?
These niggas don't give a fuck out here, dog. It's bad. It's really bad. Like the other side of the coin, right? So, like I said, me and my man, we can go out there, we can kick it, we go have a good time. And when they shut it down, they shut us down. And we was like, nah, we can't be out there, man. All our spots, like we saw people we kick it with, they was at the same spots on Instagram, partying, like our brunch spot was still live. They had to shut that spot down. I don't, and then outside of my social circle and like my social surroundings, I live in a suburb just north of Austin, right? The only reason, and granted, I lived there because I was working central. My other half was working north. And so it made sense to move there, right? Right. And like the suburb happened to be coincidentally like where the black people from town kind of migrated when gentrification happened, right? So it's like that. But the other side of the coin is the white people who live there because they don't want to live in Austin because Austin is too liberal. And you don't find that out till you're like, so I'm 34, I realize that. You get invited to the Facebook groups, and it's people who are like, no, people shouldn't be going out, but they're also like, you can't infringe on my rights. Right. And wearing a mask is weak. And if you're at risk, you should stay home, but it shouldn't infringe on my fun. Like those people. And it was word, like, and granted, like I got all kinds of flaws, right? We all do, but I don't understand not having the empathy for people to say, yo, if I'm doing something that's going to put your health at risk, I probably shouldn't be doing it. Like, I don't understand it, but again, it's been both sides of the coin, man. People who look like me have been being reckless, and people who don't look like me have been being selfish. Like, it's, oh man,
I totally get it, bro. I get it. And it's not even so much having empathy for other folks. It's just having just self-awareness. Like understanding, this ain't about me necessarily, right? Like, of course, we're all selfish in our own ways, right? But sometimes you got to be selfless and understand that like shit isn't just about you. You know what I mean? Like, like not even so much that you're putting other people at risk, but you're putting yourself at risk. You're putting people that are in your family at risk that you don't even have any idea. Like we all like to pretend like we're the healthiest beings in our family. No, you don't know who has an underlying condition in your family. You don't know if there's kids in your family that have an underlying condition. Like all these things, all these variables come into play, and to just have this like this like almost a selfish attitude about it is mind-boggling to me. I'm interested. Is it just a Texas thing? Is it a liberal conservative thing? What is it?
I'll tell you what, the thing about Texas, like that I've noticed is like, as big as it is, even though everybody really lives in like 4 cities. Right. Again, like I-35 is a straight line. And literally each exit is like a mile apart, right? So Austin stops at like 246 and Pflugerville starts at like 248. There's people who don't leave Pflugerville to go to Austin. You know what I'm saying? Like, and people in Austin, unless you go into the outlets, not passing through Pflugerville. So the other half does not know how the other half lives and doesn't care. Like, Pflugerville, like, so I work for the community college system out here, right? Pflugerville is in between Round Rock and Austin. Round Rock pays taxes to the community college. Austin pays taxes to the community college. Pflugerville does not. So what does that mean? If you were to take a class at any of the campuses, and there's like 9 throughout the area, right? You take a class there and you're in district, so you pay taxes to it, it's $85 for every credit hour. So a class will run you like $250, right? If you're out of district, it's $363 per credit hour. So a class runs you $1,200, right? Pflugerville voted against paying the taxes because they couldn't get a building built in Pflugerville. Now, Manny, I lived in Pflugerville and drove to the Round Rock campus every day. It was a 15-minute drive with traffic. The Highland campus where I used to work in Austin, the other way, is a 20-minute drive with traffic. But that little piece of town, where the total population in Pflugerville was under 30,000, they were felt so disrespected that they couldn't get their own building built in the city, and they'd have to drive 15 minutes that they voted against it. Like, and again, Pflugerville ain't like the most evil place in the world. It's not like when they put the Grim Reaper on the map on Lovecraft Country. It ain't that bad, but it's like I can be so insulated and care about me so much that what everybody else is doing don't matter. And that, I'm not saying that's just a Texas thing, but
no, it's not. It's absolutely
It's bad out here. Like it is. Boy, people are really out for self, man. And I just, I don't know, we'll talk about it later, but a big part of Black Wrestling Coalition came like to my mind because being out for self only gets you so far. And at the end of the day, it's about, like, I don't feel good doing things for me. I feel good making things happen for people like me. So yeah, it's, I'm not saying the way that I do it is like this supreme godly way, but I just don't understand doing it the other way. I really don't.
No, I totally get it, and you make some great astute observations. So you led into it, man. Tell me about Black Wrestling Coalition, man. This is a new venture that you're starting up. I love the idea as soon as you announced it. So go ahead, man. Just you already led into it with kind of one of the reasons why you started it, but just kind of go in depth of like the purpose of it, why you started it, and what you hope to achieve.
Yeah, so like I told you, like that weekend, WrestleMania weekend last year, kind of running the gamut of videos and audios and hosting and producing and all that stuff. I woke up that Tuesday, because not Monday, because Monday I was broken, but that Tuesday, you sit back and you look at everything that you produced and made, and it's like, this is really something. This sticks. I got lucky, man. I was a kid who graduated college in 2008. Didn't know what he was going to do with his life. Had a job, had a place, stuff like that, but didn't know where he was going. I find Trav and Dre on the East Coast Cast, and it's guys talking about wrestling like I talk about it with my friends, and I got cool with those guys. I end up co-hosting with Travis, and then stuff starts happening. So now we're in PW Torch. We had South Congress, but now like Wade Keller's asking us to co-host shows with him, and Bruce Mitchell's on shows, and that starts taking off. That gets to a point where, that's running parallel to like the Twitter thing. Like, I don't know. There are things that come together to make you quote unquote good at Twitter, right? You gotta say funny things. You gotta make observations. Girls gotta like you for whatever that's worth. You roll all those things into one ball, and then all of a sudden, like, you got a few thousand followers. And then, we were doing the Instagram stuff. We were doing the YouTube stuff. So you put all this together, and next thing I know, I'm on Botchamania. I grew up watching Botchamania, right?
Yeah.
And that was an organic thing where, like, Matthew was just like, yo, I mess with your tweets. You're a funny dude. I like your observations. Like, let's get together and do stuff. So I say all that to say, it's not to brag on me. I say all this to say, like, I sat back and looked, and I was like, yo, like, I have a voice in wrestling. Like, I have a voice in this space. People care what I think. When a show happens, people are in my mentions, like, asking me what I think about it. Like, who knows what made this happen, but this is here. And then I'll look at, it was really a couple of people, Manny. It was my man Kristen with Tiger Driver and my man Graham with Public Enemies Pod. And
shout out to all of them, by the way.
Yeah, man. And the crazy thing, I met Graham at South by Southwest at a day party like 4 years ago. And the only reason we linked, he's wearing like an iced out WWE logo chain. And like, all of a sudden I'm like, yo, like, okay. So we kind of rock with that. But I look at these kids, man, and the stuff that it took me years to get the basic level at. We're talking like Photoshop and Premiere and all that stuff. Like, these kids are wizards at it. And I'm like, yo, I know these kids are dope. Like, I know it. And other people need to know it. Why isn't Graham hosting a spotlight show for ROH or NWA? Why isn't Kristen designing logos and merch for WWE when they've been putting out dog shit for years? Like, why isn't this happening? The reason it's not happening is because, and all due respect to them, but there are absolutely black wrestling check marks who fuck with the same 4 or 5 people, right? And I'm not even knocking them because it ain't their fault. But
no, you're just speaking facts. Yeah. But it's also that nobody's shining a light on these black men and women who are making all this dope shit, right? So if I got 7,000 followers on Twitter and my man has 750 and I know his shit is dope and I'm not telling nobody, what am I doing? Right.
Like, that's me. Like, the thing about wrestling is that a lot of people, let's talk about Hulk Hogan. For everything we hate about Hulk Hogan, right? Hulk Hogan doing things to protect his spot is what everybody else did. Like, that's what they do. You know what I'm saying? That's a part of the business. It's like sports. Like, you know, you want to be QB1. If you got to throw a little salt on QB2 to get it done, a lot of people are going to do that. That's just the way it goes.
Yeah.
But like, you know, man, you and I, we do this stuff, even though like you're very good at it. And I feel like I'm very good at it. This isn't how we feed ourselves. You know what I'm saying? Like, we're good outside of this. So, like, how can we not take this thing that we love, these things we like to do, and not put somebody else on? You know, like, it just made sense to me. And really, the big thing was, and I hate to use a tragedy to explain how I came to something, but you know, George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, like all this crazy stuff out here happening to Black people. You know, my whole thing was, you know, I went out and I protested, and you know, I got it with the tear gas and you know the whole nine. And I sat back and looked at it, and I was like, I felt like my life was in danger, but there are people who deal with that kind of stuff all the time, you know. And am I going to be out protesting every time there's a protest? I can't say that I will. I don't know if that's in me. I don't know if I got the heart to do that. But what I do have is a platform. What I do have is thousands of people who will listen to the things I say. So what do? I look at these kids who, and I call them all kids, half of them are my age, right? But I look at these kids who are out here making these wrestling podcasts, making this wrestling merch, making these videos, ring announcing and managing and putting together shows. And I'm like, yo, you kids are so good at what you do. Let's let people know that we are in it together, that we know who each other are. We're not threatened by each other, that we want what's best, and we will work to make sure that we get a space in this community that we give so much to. So
absolutely. That's
it
dope.
was there, man. It was like Black Wrestling Coalition. We're going to start Patreon. I want y'all to give me $1 a month, because this ain't Book of the Month Club. You know what I mean? Like, this ain't me trying to get money out of nobody. I don't need money from nobody. I'm straight. But this is saying this $1 a month has us linked together. We're putting all that money to organizations we think help us. And we are I'm going to signal boost every single thing you do. Like, if you put together a podcast, I'm tweeting that out. If you got merch, I'm tweeting that out. If you want me on your show, I'm tweeting that out. If you want me to get somebody that I can reach to be on your show, I'm making that happen. You want me to be in a video, we're doing that. When the world opens back up, if you need me at your show, you need me wearing your shirt, you need me promoting your stuff, I'm doing that. And we're all going to do that for each other, because at the end of the day, like, there are people who are going to be able to eat off of wrestling. There are absolutely people like that. There are also those of us who are in the space enough to where we can contribute, maybe get our little thing out of it, you know, or maybe not. Like, I'm not one to talk about money, but, you know, I can put gas in the tank off wrestling. You know what I'm saying? I can pay for my liquor habit off wrestling. And that, you know, it happened like that, you know? And I got to shout out to Fansided. Fansided was a big part of that, man. Because what it did was, you know, I'd be on Twitter and I'd be acting a fool, even though I'll drop a gem every now and again. But what Fansided gave me the chance to do was, okay, Cam is a wild dude, but when he sits down, you got to put him in front of a computer, you got to type something out. Okay, this is what all that means. Like, this is what he's saying in his tweets, you know, in a way that's accessible to Twitter. But this is what he's actually saying to me, regular guy who doesn't get down like that. So shout out to them for that. But yeah, man, there's just so many avenues that the people like us, and that don't mean Black guy who listens to this music or Black guy who wears these clothes, because Graham ain't Kristen and Kristen ain't Graham.
Right, we're not a monolith. Absolutely.
They're different, you know, but those are both kids. And I always call them Kristen. It's Christian, even though it's spelled like Kristen. But, you know, those are kids who listen to different music, who wear different clothes, but are all just super talented. And so, yeah, man, it was just a chance for me to sit back and look at the quote-unquote clout that I had and be like, yeah, we can put all this together, man. and shout out to LeBeau and shout out to Faye Jackson, because I think a lot of times, and granted, I ain't MLK, this ain't civil rights, but a lot of times, like, as black men, we talk about all these things that we're doing, and we tend to forget, like, I got black women behind me who really want this stuff to work. You know what I'm saying? So shout out to them, man, for just being super positive and letting me bounce ideas off of them. But and maybe I know we got other stuff to talk about, but this is the biggest thing.
No, absolutely. Go ahead. Do your thing.
Like, I don't name drop, right? But this thing got to the point where when I knew that we had something is when, like, wrestlers started, like, DMing me, yo, I feel the same way you do. Or, yo, look at this meme. This is exactly how I feel, but I'm not allowed to say it. So can you put it out there so we can talk about it? And it was like, oh, okay.
That gives it validation. Absolutely.
Yeah. So a lot of it was like, Black Wrestling Coalition is not just about black people who do things adjacent to wrestling. It's also about the wrestlers. Like, there are absolutely wrestlers who echo the things that we do, but can't say it because they got money on the line. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
Like, wrestling could disappear for me tomorrow and I'm going to be straight, but that's not what I got all my eggs in. They're not all in that basket. So like, it's also about making sure that the people who need a voice have a voice. Because, like, a lot of these kids, and I'm not saying that these are the kids who feel the exact same way, but I look at a Faye Jackson, I look at a Lee Moriarty, I look at my dog, AJ Gray, who is absolutely outspoken about this stuff. But, like, it's going to come to a point where they're going to have to decide how much they can say and how much money they can make. You know what I'm saying? Like, they have to do that. And that's everybody at every job in the entire world. It ain't just black people. And so they need the people like us who can always say the things we know they feel. And if they can get that from an organized group, I think that's so much more important. And so me, who hates to be organized, me, who hates to be in charge of anything, was like, I got to do this. Like, this is necessary. And of course, I hope to do this for 6 months and pass it off to somebody better. I really hope to do that.
You're not doing it for the shine of it. You're just doing it because it needed to be started, right? Yeah.
There's other things I want to do, man. Like, I gotta, again, the Boshamania thing was different, man. Like, all of a sudden, you do a podcast that, could reach, a couple thousand people, or you do like Wade Keller's show, which is going to reach 10, 20,000 people. You get on Botchamania, that's 200,000 people. Like, that's a whole nother, like,
that's a whole nother level
stuff. Yeah. So it's like, okay, well, I'm doing this now, so I got to figure out a way to top that. So it's always about doing stuff new. But yeah, for right now, man, I'm excited to have this thing organized, to have the voice out. If you buy merch off What a Maneuver, Black Wrestling Coalition shirts are coming out Friday the 28th. So, all kind of stuff going on, man. I just hope I want to leave my mark, but I really just want to leave my people better, man. That's what's important to me. Leaving this thing better than when we found it.
And how much of that also is, changing, the cycle, changing the behavior of the past generations? Because I think a lot of this is also, not to talk down on other brothers and sisters, but going back to the past, that crabs in the barrel mentality where, because I say all the time, when I first got into podcasting, like, I thought I had to compete with a Cameron Hawkins, or I thought that I had to compete with, name a podcast, right? Like, I thought that I had to compete with them instead of like, no, I got my own box. I have my own lane. Like, nobody does what I do, and I can't do what the next man does. I can't do what Cam Hawkins does. Like, that's him.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So how much of this is also like, because you talked about it, I think in your lead into BWC, in that a lot of people are out there that are talented, that have these dope concepts and ideas, but they're not getting the shine, they're not getting the look. And for the people that are the people that look like us, that are in those positions of power, they don't look at us. They don't hire us because they came up in a time where, you know what I'm saying, they had to protect their spot, or there could only be one talented black person or Spanish person or whatever in the group. You know what I mean? So how much of that is changing that behavior, breaking that cycle?
Yeah. So, what got me was, like I talked about my man Christian, like his, I love his merch. I love the Tiger Driver merch. And the funny story, I swear, and I've told him this, and it's not a lie. I was thinking about doing merch called Tiger Driver 98 2 years ago. And I just think it's the coolest name for a move ever. So I was like, I could slap Tiger Driver 98 on something, and that's going to take off. And then this kid does Tiger Driver, and I'm like, God damn, like that would have been a great idea. But I look at their merch, heavily rock inspired, and they are him and Jake, like they are kids who really like embrace like the rock culture, and really the ECW culture is really what they kind of hone in on. Like they're big Mike Awesome fans, right? I can't make the dope ass Mike Awesome shirt that they made. Like I can't make the Tiger Driver crazy metal logo. So when we did the BW Coalition shirts, I was like, yo, we got What a Maneuver to do it. I have to make like this crazy logo. And I sat back, I said, Cam, you're not the crazy logo guy. Like you are the simple logo on the breastplate guy. Like that's who you are. Like you're not super big, flashy, in your face designs. And that's what those kids do. And you can't take that lane. Like, so what I do, bought me some Tiger Driver shorts. I supported the homies, and then I went my way. Like you said, and to be specific, and it's not even to knock these men, but it's hard watching a Mark Henry and a Booker T treat black talent the way that they do. Like it's difficult. And that's not saying they're right or wrong, but it is saying that that's past generation stuff. Like that's stuff that, like you said, crabs in a barrel. I got to look out for me. I know they're not going to let three of us in. So if one of us get in, that's better than nothing. Like that, right. That really does exist. I think that, and Manny, I would never speak to your generation or your relationship with your parents because I don't know that, right? But, a big disconnect between myself and my parents generationally was that even if things bother you, you have to be careful how you express it because you don't want the other person to shut down. And I'm like, nah, if something was done wrong to me, I got to speak to what happened. I got to talk about it. If you don't rock with that, like that's you. And the biggest thing for me was like, these kids are talented. What makes more sense to my spirit? Me making it in spite of them or them making it because I helped? Like what really matters more at the end of the day? Like you think Ward Dunn would trade a Super Bowl ring for those hundreds of houses that he put single mothers in? Absolutely. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's about what really matters, man. And so, like you said, I'm absolutely inspired by the idea that if we don't help us, ain't nobody gonna help us. One of the first things I wrote for Fansided was about the Jim Cornette situation at NWA. And I'm like, damn, as much as I don't like Jim Cornette ain't the problem. And Lagana proved that by being Lagana, right? But it was like Jim Cornette ain't the problem because you know who you hired. The problem is, the people in charge who thinks, they think this is how it has to be. Like, hire a black kid. You hire a brother, you're not going to worry about the black jokes that's on air because they're going to tell you what you can and can't say. You know what I mean? Exactly. So, that's like, you nailed it, man. That's really it. It's like this older generation felt like they had to be concerned with them. And maybe they did, I don't know what happened to y'all backstage specifically. Maybe that's exactly how it had to go. I don't got to do that. You know what I'm saying? Like this is... It's just the culture, man. It's just the culture that people were upbringing. It's not... It's a lot of times we like to think like, oh, it's something that happened, something that was ingrained to them. No, I just think it's a culture. I think it's always been... People do things because it's just always been the way that people have done it. So like, oh, okay, well, if this has always been the way, then there's no real impetus to try to question it. You know what I mean? Like there's never been somebody to say, well, why is this the way? Like, why is it that we've always done this way for generation after generation after generation? No one's actually stopped and said, okay,
this is kind of dumb. Like, why don't we change that? Like, you know what I mean? So like, if you consistently, it's like if you consistently do something over and over, and then the next people that follow you over and over again, they do the same thing, like it just becomes the culture. It just becomes what everybody just does because that's no one else is actually bothered to say, no, that's not okay. Or no, that's a problem. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I mean, I think what you're doing is great, man. I think it's dope. I will do everything in my power to help support it and to get it out there, because I think it's a wonderful project, and you know, I wish you all the luck with it, man. I think it's very much needed in the space. So
yeah, man. I just, I always wanted to be an A&R. when I used to rap a long time ago, right? I was like, yo, like rapping is cool, but like if this thing ever really took off, and granted, who knows rap, right? If this thing ever took off, when you put me in front of a microphone, I got to talk like me and act like me. It's not going to work because I can't sing like Drake. And he came along and could kind of do both, right? But I was like, this is never going to work. But I'd love to be somebody's manager, man. I'd love to be the one to go into meetings and say, this is what my guy needs. That would be so perfect. And so this is a chance to do that, man, just to be like, I can bring you this kid. Like, I'm not bragging about it because it's what you're supposed to do, but I put like 3 or 4 people on at fan sign. Like people I knew were good at what they did. Because it was like, yo, how can I not do this? Like, what I look like.
And it's just the right thing. Like, it's just the right thing to do. It's like, it's just like, it's not even like some personal accomplishment. It's the right thing to do. Like, if I'm good at something and I know, and I've been put on a pedestal, not even put on a pedestal, but I've been given a platform, and I know other people that can contribute and do as well, if not better, then like, that's just the right thing to do, to like, uplift someone else that may not have the shine or may not have the recourse or whatever to get to that spot. You know what I mean? That doesn't mean that you sacrifice yourself or sacrifice integrity or whatever. Like, that doesn't mean that you go overboard with it, but you always have to like try to help the next man along. And if they and give them the shot. And if they take it and run it, great. Awesome. You do what you do. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, it just boggles my mind that so many people just don't look at it that way. Like, they're just like, oh, you don't owe anybody anything.
Yeah. And even though he is kind of set in his ways and is like, what he does is perfectly enough for him. He doesn't really want to do a whole lot more. Travis Bryant, man, like I feel like I feel this way, but I owe it to him that he felt that way. And he was like, yo, like, that's my man. I want to
shout out to Travis, by the way.
Yeah, I've always carried that. Like, I've always been appreciative for him for that, and always tried to do that on my end too. Like, yo, like, this is the way to go about it. Because, like there's gonna come a day where I'm gonna need something from somebody. Not that I'm out here begging for handouts, but somebody's gonna be in a position to help me out, and I need to be able to say, yeah, I was there. Like, I held people down like this. And so this is something I deserve. Like, that's going to come. And when it does, like, again, I want to be able to have on my resume that I helped set up a bunch of other resumes. Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure, man. For sure. Absolutely, man. Well, I'll give you time at the end of the show to plug everything going on and, definitely get it the attention that it needs. Cause I think it's, like I said, it's something important that's needed in the space, for real. So again, moving on to this thing we call wrestling that we love. How do you feel like the pandemic has either positive influenced wrestling or negatively influenced wrestling? Like, just kind of go ahead. Because I'll be honest, full disclosure, I have completely just fallen off wrestling, man. Like, I just, it's hard to watch, man. I always knew that the audience was a big part of the show, but I think not having an audience has just, it's shined a light on me for sure that it's just not the same. It's just not, It's not the same thing. You know what I mean? And since WrestleMania, other than maybe a few shows, I'll skip Raw, I'll skip SmackDown. I'll wait for the Keller Hotline, or I wait for you to talk about it, or I'll wait, whatever. But, it's just been really, really like the third or fourth thing in the back of my mind in wrestling. So how do you feel like other people feel this way too? And how do you think the pandemic overall has affected wrestling?
So even on the macro, right? It has absolutely hurt ratings. I don't think that non-audience wrestling is a destination for people. On the macro, There are other shows that have been on like on a Monday or a Wednesday. Friday night, it's kind of pick your poison. So on the macro, like it has absolutely hurt the viewership. On the micro, I ain't watching no damn wrestling on Friday night. I'm just not. Like, again, responsible social distancing, but I still got shit to do on Friday nights. They're not gonna put me in front of a TV at 7:00 unless Wade puts up the bat signal and I gotta watch. And a lot of times it's been the same thing with Monday nights. Now, with the job being busy, I end up stuck on my couch anyway and I can't get up. So I'm like, okay, watch wrestling. But what's funny is I do think that the good wrestlers have excelled in this space. Like, I think Drew McIntyre has done really well for himself in how he presents. Asuka is right up there. Sasha and Bayley are right up there. You flip to the other side, and MJF is up there, or Cody's up there, or Jericho's always going to be up there. And then, like, the guy who I don't like as a human being, Randy Orton's been up there, man. And here's the thing about it, to tie back into what you were originally saying. Wrestling don't hit the same with a live audience, right? What if you have a super talented wrestler who despises the wrestling fan base? Randy Orton has been smoking it, and it's amazing. Like
arguably the best of his career. Arguably the best of his career.
Yeah, man. He is all the way dialed in. All he had to do was not have to be around people, and he's been smoking it, right? So,
the antisocial push of 2020.
Yeah, man. And like Big E's been killing it on the mic because things have transpired to where it looks like he's getting his singles push. Like I said, Sasha and Bayley been dialed in. Yeah. You finally get and what's interesting too about a Randy Orton and a Sasha Banks, finally healthy. Finally healthy to where they can just go. And so, yeah, man, it's been an adjustment, and they've adjusted. Like, of course, AEW has the talent around ringside, and they're starting to flirt with having people in the audience. WWE, up until this week, came up with, they're in the PC with the glass casing and have their developmental prospects as audience members, and let's help people. Like Seth Rollins, who I think is very good, has been helped by this because he cuts the type of promo that you have to have people to play off of, right? So that's helped. But yeah, overall, it has not been as good to watch as it is with a live audience. And, you and I have seen it with a live audience for 30 years. How could we not know this, right? But like, whereas the UFC still works because they really fight and they really getting coached. And
the crowd is not as much of it's. I mean, UFC is a sport. You know what I mean? The
crowd wasn't there. They probably wish the crowd only popped up after the match, after the fight. So yeah, that's been good. And even I know we're going to talk about the NBA, but I think the NBA has actually been just fine because it's whereas wrestling absolutely is competition, it's a lot more ballet. Like the competition is execution. In the NBA, the competition is busting that nigga's ass on the other side. And so to me, the NBA's work because like probably, and you can correct me if I'm wrong about this, in the sense of competition in the immediacy, the NBA is probably the biggest dickheads in the world. Like everybody on the football team isn't a 5'9" corner or a 6'3" receiver, right? So it's not just that. There are other people that play. But no, the NBA is people trying to bust each other the whole time. And so it still feels like the playoffs to me. But yeah, with WWE, there is, like outside of the people we talk about, and still, like Kevin Owens is going. And Apollo Crews, thanks to MVP, and there's a lot of people who should think MVP right now. There are guys who are going, but yeah, it still is not the same. Like, there's nothing that makes me really want to watch on Friday nights. And AEW on Wednesday, while not perfect, has been better than NXT on Wednesdays. And a lot of that has to do with atmosphere. Absolutely.
Yeah. No, the crowd is really, the lack of crowd has really hurt it. It has, and it's hurt. This is just to me. I can't speak for everybody else, but it hurts. It hurts the other sports too, or the other forms of entertainment. Some sports have handled it better than others. I think baseball's done probably about its best as it could without the fans. I think basketball, I think it's lacking. I think it hurts. I do think that it's hurt basketball in a touch. I don't think it's tangible. Like, I don't think that, you know what I'm saying, you know, it's affecting it that much, but I do think it's something that's missing, you know what I mean? Not having that crowd. And I think for wrestling is huge. For me, it is anyway. You and I both know that wrestling, a great crowd can make a show 10 times better. It just can easily. And a bad crowd can make a good show just that much worse. You know what I mean? It's such an intangible that I think people just really don't understand or don't really comprehend that audience feedback. You know what I mean? Especially in wrestling, which you said is theater, it's ballet, it's entertainment as opposed to sports where you're still watching competition. You're still watching LeBron versus Dame, or, you know, you're still watching that competition. And wrestling is different. It's a show. You know what I mean? And when you have a show that's used to having an audience, which is just as much a bigger part of that show as possible, that it's hurt it. Yeah, but I agree with you. Some guys have gotten a chance to shine. I was one of those. Drew has grown on me. I was one of those that just did not see it with Drew just yet, but he's grown on me. I like his presentation. I think it's sad that he's gotten this push and then there's really been no audience to really give you that feedback. Big E, obviously. I think what COVID has done is that it's shined the light on the MVPs, the guys that are really the heart and soul of all those rosters, man, for real. Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So what have been what's been the biggest negative? We shine the light on the positives, but what's been the biggest negative for you? Besides the fans, obviously.
Yeah. Probably, and it's weird besides the fans, because my biggest negative is absolutely the reaction to, I want to know how people feel about Drew. Like, I really want to know that. They did not get to see him like in a live audience as champion. Mm-hmm. I want to know how people feel about a Raw Underground, which has its highs but has its lows.
What is the purpose of it? That's my thing. Like, what the explanation of? Yeah, yes, I know that part, but I guess they've just done a poor job of like, what does this all mean in the grand scheme of things? Like, what is the actual purpose of this?
Because they put the guy in front who doesn't care about anything. Like Shane McMahon, I mean, maybe to his credit, because I could imagine being a crazy person at this point, living in that family, but he's so nonchalant about everything. Like, I don't feel his enthusiasm for Raw Underground. Like, I made the joke that, their Thunderdome looks like Mojo World from X-Men. Mojo was all the way dialed in on Mojo World. That was the most important thing in the world. Yeah. He was a crazy person, right? But, I feel like what the goal is to add legitimacy to a certain amount of talent. Like, it's absolutely, for somebody who can't stand Dolph Ziggler, right? Because Dolph Ziggler has the same problems that Chris Paul has without all of the good things Chris Paul has done. Without the success, right? He's a fucking tryhard.
Chris Paul and Dolph Ziggler in the same podcast. I mean, that's a hell of a comparison.
Tryhard, man. Chris Paul, don't understand. Turn it down a couple of notches, bro. Be cool. But Chris Paul is absolutely a top, and you can say it, top 6-7 point guard all time. You got a Magic, and don't get me started, because I'll put Tony Parker above Chris Paul.
Don't do that. See, you trying to bait me into that argument. I'm ignoring it. I'm ignoring you. Trying to bait me into that argument.
Chris Paul and I'm even thinking just this generation, man. Him and Russ, even though Russ is less conventional, these are guys who are Hall of Famers. There's no question about it, right? But nobody likes Chris Paul. That's also true. How I feel about Dolph Ziggler. I can't stand this motherfucker. You're so talented, but you just do entirely too many things. But I tell you what, that first Raw Underground, where he was really doing that wrestling, I was like, my God, if you were this the whole time and you shut the fuck up, I would love you. So it's a way to have talent do different things. Like, I really think it's about a two-way vehicle, like for real. But it's way too. It's too Def Jam Vendetta without
right. That's a perfect name for it. It's too much Def Jam Vendetta. I don't like it because I don't like when like, oh, this part of the show is real. So as opposed to every other part of the show that wasn't. That so like how do you square that? Like how do you square this hour between 10 and 11 or whatever? You know, this is real. This is like but then the other 2 hours that we have to sit through isn't. So like what is what's the counterbalance, or what's the middle point? That's the issue that I have with it. To me, it's like either you treat everything as being real and everything is raw underground, or everything isn't. But to have that like dual parallel universe, to me, is kind of wonky and weird, and I just don't. I don't know. I like the idea and its concept, but I just
If they said that part of, and they would have to come out and say it, like flat out say it, that there's more to winning a wrestling match than pinning the other person. You are given, and they would have to say it. I keep repeating that. You are given more opportunities and more money for showmanship during a match. That would need to be expressed. For Raw Underground, where there is no showmanship, where it's literally about taking the other person out as quickly as you can. Like, they would have to draw that distinction. The problem with WWE is, and I think you're going to see this, Raw Underground will not be here in its same skin, in its same spirit 2 months from now, because nothing has ever in WWE. That's not how it works. So when people say you're a hater and you're just negative because you never get into anything new, my response is, tell me what was new that's still around. And you never get an answer. Because there is no answer. Because they lose interest in the things they do.
And the sense of just liking things because it's new isn't a draw for me. Like, I'm not going to like something that's new just because, it's new and it hasn't been done before. So let's just do that. Like, no, even if it's new, even if it's fresh, even if it's a fresh idea and concept, it still has to be good. It still has to have the execution. It still has to be treated like this matters. Like, I like my wrestling when it, like, I know that it matters. Like, the storylines matter. The characters that are being portrayed, they feel like they matter. They're just kind of being thrown out here in these random shoots and these random fights. And like, it's great. It's entertaining on the face, on the surface. Yeah, but what does that all mean at the end? Yeah, and that's my thing.
Yeah. I mean, I just don't think it's something they'll follow through with. And
I feel like it's a means to an end for them. It's like it's something to fill time. That was a good idea. It was something different. So it's like, okay, let's just put it out there. But like you said, is it? Yeah. No, absolutely. The Speak Out movement. Are you surprised? Like, I don't know. Follow me here for a second, right? So I'm feeling like when I remember the weekend that the whole Speak Out movement really grew its legs, right? Because I remember I was going to have you on the podcast, scheduling conflicts happened, whatever. But like that was all everybody was talking about, right? Like that was the biggest news. And we all know that 2020, that's the way the news cycle is. I mean, everything is short term anyway, but are you, at least for me anyway, like, are you surprised that the Speak Out movement kind of feels like it kind of came and went? Like it just kind of was just there. It was something that we talked about for a week or two, and then it just kind of disappeared. At least that's my perspective. You're inside the bubble, so you can tell me a little bit better from your perspective if I'm wrong or if...
Here's the thing, and I'm glad you pointed that out. So here's the thing that's a little different, right? The conversation is still going, right? But a lot of it is more behind closed doors. And so here's probably the best example I can give you. When Speaking Out first happened, one of the names that comes up is Patrick Clark, the Velveteen Dream, right? And you have him accused of not accused of pedophilia, but and what's the term I'm looking for? Accused of grooming children, right? So, and this is not me dunking on you, but let me ask you, did anybody reach out to you to say, this thing is true, this thing is not true, or here's what you should think about it?
No.
Okay. So when it happens, of course I'm retweeting. Of course I'm replying and talking to this. Multiple women, some in a wrestling, from a wrestling perspective, some from a promoter's perspective, some from a managerial perspective, was like, look, I can't say that he talks to children, but what I can say is the way that he's talking to this kid, he talked to me or my friend or my girlfriend or somebody I know at school. And I was like, damn, like.
Yeah.
So what happened with speaking out was it was loud at first, but what it did was it connected a lot of people who didn't normally talk to each other. And so, and she's actually talked about this, so I can talk about it without getting into detail. But you remember when the David Starr stuff happened, right?
Yeah, I remember.
So Vic is my homegirl, and we never had a conversation about him ever, right? Because she was like, yo, what happened to me happened to me. But I got my own life. I got my own career. Don't got nothing to do with wrestling.
Right.
He's a scumbag, but whatever.
Right.
He kept running his mouth about how supportive he was about speaking out, and then had the hubris to make a note apology to the women he'd wronged. And then those same women came together, thanks to Vic, and were like, no, here's how you sexually abuse me. Right? So it didn't die. It just ain't on TV no more. You know what I'm saying? That's what it is.
Right, yeah. No, and I want to rephrase that, because I'm not saying that it died or that it didn't really. I just feel like I look at it from the context of that movement came out. And I really, when I first heard the stories and everything that was coming out, I thought it was Me Too coming to wrestling, right? Like I thought, and I always felt that, like, you knew how big that movement was, right? It literally just changed everything. Obviously, we can have a discussion about that it changed too much. Has the Me Too movement now been corrupted and to mean something else now? We can have that conversation for another day, right? But the movement itself, like I thought I was going to liken it to Me Too coming to wrestling and how big that was and how it changed everything in entertainment. And it just felt like this just didn't really have that same effect. You know what I mean? Like some folks got fired, like a couple guys got let go, a couple guys got suspended. The tenor of a conversation really changed on some guys, but it didn't have that effect that the Me Too movement had, let's say, on television or on music or whatever. You get what I'm saying? So that's where I'm coming from with it. Are you surprised that happened?
Yeah, it ties back to your original point, though. Wrestling doesn't have an audience like that. Like, there aren't people at shows. So we don't know how people feel about a Velveteen Dream. I mean, we know, but we haven't seen it. We don't know how people feel about a Matt Riddle. Like, these are things that have to be tested for us to see. I think that it's quieter, but it is different. Like, you look at like these GCW shows, there are people who ain't on them that were going to be on them. You know what I mean? Like that. That is accurate. I just think that because, like you said, it's different in Hollywood because Hollywood has, I don't know if Buena Vista is still a studio, but Buena Vista, 20th Century Fox, Marvel Studios, like there are all these big companies. And so it's not going to be until we're all outside again that we really see if the public
effect
can make like a claim as to who can be supported and who can't, That's a perfect.
Yeah, I didn't think about it that way. Yeah, you're right. And honestly, this was kind of, if it was ever going to come out and it was ever going to be a thing, I think from the other side of things, it was a perfect timing that it happened when there isn't any audience, you know what I mean? Because, I mean, could you imagine, because when was that? That was like late May, June-ish time frame, right? Everything is a blur now, I'm sorry. But like, imagine if had that been June and a Raw coming up in Brooklyn, you know what I mean? Or an NXT coming up in, what, you know, in Toronto or in Brooklyn, whatever. Like, can you imagine how that would have been different? So I didn't think of it from that perspective, but now that you bring it up, yeah, that does make a lot of sense. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I guess for me, it was just a little disappointing that it feels like the movement kind of flatline, just didn't really hit or really didn't have the effect that I thought it would when I thought it, you know, when everything started coming out and everything, especially like the stuff with Riddle and Velveteen. Velveteen to me was the biggest one. He was arguably the biggest name, and the stuff that he was being accused of, I mean, that was some pretty heinous shit. So,
and the kid says he was never contacted. Like, he came out like 2 days ago and was like, WWE never reached out to me, and here's exactly what happened. And so that's still going. You know, the hard thing about him, man, like, we got to be real about it. Like, we thought he had next. You know, talented black kid. Like, for me, talented black kid from
who has that it factor, factor, right?
Yeah, and you know, me and Rich Fan were at got press passes to Access. We got on the floor before everybody. He's the first person I see, and I tell the kid flat out, like, yo, like, us older dudes, like, we're rooting for you specifically, man. Like, we think you got it, you know, and he's super appreciative. But it's like, damn, kid, like, oh, like all my friends ain't perfect. I don't rock with no pedophiles, man. And that's not me saying he's a pedophile. I'm certainly not saying that. But what I am saying is the evidence is damning. And for one thing I do in this space, I trust women. Like, I really do. And so if women tell me, if one woman tells me she has a negative reaction, my eyebrows raise, right? But if four different women are telling me this is how you are and they don't know each other, it's like, oh,
right? Absolutely.
And the biggest thing, Manny, like, again, you are somebody who covers sport. You know what I mean? Like, you ain't got the time to be digging all into indie wrestling fed to see who's saying what. Right. But with speaking out, like, I'm telling you, there's 20 British kids who you would have seen in NXT UK that you are never going to see.
Right.
There's kids in GCW you're not going to see. There are people who were promoting feds here in America that you're never going to see. That I've interacted with and talked to. And it's funny, this is one guy, and I won't put his name out, but he's a guy who had me blocked on Twitter, right?
I wonder why, Kim.
He unblocks me, right? And like, I reached out to him and I was like, yo, like you seem cool. Like, we never had no problem. Like, what was the block about? And he tells me, he's like, yo, if I ever told you what it was, you would think it was stupid, but just know, like, it ain't no thing now. And I was like, okay, you know, cool. A couple months later, they got that man up out of there for stealing money and they put him in rehab. And I'm like, oh, okay. So yeah, again, there are people like you're never going to interact with who you're also never going to see who this thing was effective against. Like, it was a grassroots thing that might stay that way. You know, these higher levels of wrestling, man, when it's a monopoly, it's hard to get people out of there. You know what I mean? But, you know, like Deadspin's trying to do the work. You know, hopefully other people pick up on it. And again, this is not us saying we want Matt Riddle and a Patrick Clark fired. But this is us saying, absolutely. Like, yo, we want all the information out in public so that so that everybody can make firm, solid, informed decisions for themselves and go from there.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't have said it better myself. Yeah. What's your take on Renee Young leaving WWE?
You know, whenever somebody leaves WWE, you know how we always say, like, you were too good for them? WWE for WWE was pretty good to her. They gave her about 15 jobs. They always really treated her like a journalist, like a news person. You know what I mean?
I'm surprised they never put her in the ring. I'm surprised they never got the itch to put her in the ring. I actually commend them for the level of discipline.
Yeah, they had Miz slap her that one time, or her slap Miz that one time. We're talking about who she's sleeping with, but for them, that was kid gloves, right? But yeah, I think with her, like, you look at your spouse's happiness, right? And you see them over here happy as a creative, and you're like, oh, I'm Renee Young. Like, I can go to Canada and get my money, or I can go here in America and get my money. I just think that the grind of WWE, I just think she can probably do better for herself doing less and have more time doing the things that probably are important to her, which is family. And that's all of us. Like, if they gave us, and this is the both of us, if they gave us just as much money, we would have as much work. We'd be fools for not taking it.
Absolutely. So, yeah.
And I also think that, and this is not me knowing Renee Young, but like, I look at how WWE has actually handled the pandemic. And I think that they are playing it looser than they should. And most places are playing it looser than they should, right? But like a Caleb Braxton catching it twice. You know what I'm saying? Like, if I had other opportunities to go elsewhere or to sit at home and get some money for a little bit, I'd probably go with that. Just because I see how people are moving. So a loss for WWE because they have somebody who is reputable, somebody they treated like they were important all the time. Hopefully, Charlie gets that role or somebody else. Or Kayla gets that role. I'm not against Kayla, but somebody. It's nice to see women in WWE treated completely with respect. And like, what they do is important outside of just the ring. So yeah, good for her if this is what she wants.
I'm surprised that it actually lasted this long. I mean, and also it became awkward because Dean has been one of the most outspoken vocal people against WWE and creative, specifically Vince McMahon. So then to have this like awkward tension of like, go ahead.
Let me tell you this really quick. So, because I can say it now because it's been like over a year, right? I'm like, I forget where I was driving to. I think I was like going to like a rec dodgeball game or something. And I checked Twitter and it was Wade. And Wade was like, Cam, are you busy? I'm like, nah, Wade, what's going on? He was like, yo, Moxley left WWE. I got the interview tomorrow. Give me some questions. I was like, oh shit, this is crazy. And like, mind you, the fact that Wade Keller is coming to you to actually, they're like, I'm sure it wasn't just me, but right. I was like, oh shit. Okay. So yeah. So yeah, I was there like from the jump where Moxley was like, yo, fuck that nigga. Like, I don't want to fuck with them like that. So yeah, again, like him just being, and that was my first point. Like, not even just the grind of WWE, but the creative aspect of WWE. Like, I very much consider wrestlers, and not all of them, but like there are wrestlers who are absolutely artists, right? Like, I think that Moxley, when they let him play himself, I think Moxley is an artist. I think Kenny Omega, even though it ain't necessarily my art, I think him and the Bucks are artists. I think MJF on that mic, I think he's an artist because I've seen the things that he's studied and the things he's called back to, like to where I'm like, no, this kid is like a student and artist. Like, did you catch when he was walking out to the inauguration speech?
I did.
How he's walking and he pushes the guy against the wall?
Yeah.
Okay. And then you catch how that was a callback to Samoa Joe doing it to him. And he like, okay, like, this kid's an artist, right? He studies the game, right? And so these people are artists. So I can imagine like dealing with the frustration while they're in the same company that he's coming home with. And so once he's gone and he's like, yo, went to AEW this week, got to Tony Khan, got to wear this jacket. You know, we say this in the promo. Shit's pretty cool. And she's like, damn, I had to wear that same black blouse for the third week in a row. Not saying she does that, but I'm sure there's like a no comparison after the frustration. So yeah, absolutely.
I mean, Moxley was one of the biggest wastes of potential in WWE. I mean, the fact that they just never could figure out how to write that character is it's just mind-boggling. I mean, it really is. It's just, such wasted money and potential with him. And not on his end. I mean, on their end. I mean, just it's really just, how did you get that wrong? Because I said it at the beginning. I thought I've always thought Dean, as far as everything, total package, he was the best of the Shield. By far, to me. People disagree with me. Some say Seth, some say Roman. I think Dean had it all. He could have been the biggest star of that trio. And they just fumbled the bag. Fumbled the bag royally. And he's a guy that I think they would desperately love to get back. Desperately.
Yeah. I think there's a reason that, he was the one in the middle. He was the one with the U.S. title from the jump. There's a reason, even though they sabotaged it, there's a reason they sent him to SmackDown as WWE champ and had him there with Cena and AJ. Like, I think he is that good.
Absolutely.
I think that, but I tell you what, my favorite Mox is Black Trunks, New Japan, John Moxley. Oh man, he blew me away. I was like, this is what I wanted from the guy the whole time. Like, he should be this. This is great. I think he is. And it's funny when you say like the best of the Shield. I definitely think that was the right three guys to go with. Like, all due respect to Chris Hero, who I greatly enjoy. I think that there are pluses to all of them. I think they're all really good. But yeah, a combination of me having faith in the things you say and me having faith in the things that you do. Moxley is the guy.
Yeah. Do you think Roman ever comes back?
Yes. However, I think that he's one movie deal away from not coming back. I think that there are still so many people who don't know him. Like, I always bring up, there's a generation of people, and I hate when Reeves tries to parallel this to The Rock, because I still kind of disagree, but there's a generation of people who love Dave Bautista, who love Drax, that have no idea he was ever in a wrestling ring. You know what I mean? I think it's just going to take the right person seeing Roman Reigns and being like, yo, that Joe Anoa'i guy, we can make money off this guy, putting him in a movie. And I really think so. So it's funny. I've never considered him never coming back, but I'm like, yo, like, I think the world is going to have to be different. Like salute to him for really putting his health first.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, I think that the world's going to have to be a different place before he comes back outside.
I've been thinking about it a lot lately because, when he pulled out of WrestleMania, obviously it was during the hysteria of the pandemic and us not knowing anything. And the fact that he's not back, he's rarely, if ever, mentioned on TV. I feel like if there ever was a time where he's just said, you know what, I've made my money, I've had the success that I had in WWE, even if it was just limited or or arguably not as much as it should have been, I'm good. I can do a couple more sequels with my cousin, Fast and Furious, get that bag, and then who knows from there? You know what I mean? And he's still young enough, he's still in shape where he could walk away now, come back later. I don't know. I feel like if he was ever going to do it, now is the perfect time. He could he's already quote unquote left. He's on hiatus. Like, why not? I think it's worth considering if I was him.
Yeah, I feel like, yeah. And what's interesting is like, we found out after he had to leave for the first time how much the locker room appreciates him. Like, that's really their guy. You know what I mean? And so, knowing that,
I think they respected. I think the locker room respected that he took so much shit and still showed up every day, got better, like actively got better. That's one thing you could say about him, is that he's a better. I know it's customary to ask in a wrestling podcast, why didn't Roman Reigns work? But do you still to this day understand why Roman Reigns just did not work?
Absolutely. It's part of the conversation we had earlier. Like, he's not the one that we put number one in that group. Because I think they're all good, but I do think he would be third total package-wise in the Shield. But he's good. I don't know if I'd necessarily rock with the idea that Roman Reigns is so good looking men don't like him. Like, I don't know if I get down with that, because like, that's like every wrestler, not every wrestler, but every wrestler looks better than
the average human. Yes.
Than the person who claims that doesn't like. Like, Kevin Owens can get your girl, believe it or not. But like, I think the reason it didn't work with him was because they misread the Royal Rumble where Batista beat him. Mm-hmm. I think that they looked at that as, oh, Roman's next. And I think that they started to sabotage him when he kept the Shield music and the look after the Shield. I think that was a bad start. I think that one of the reasons I think the locker room respects him so much is because they all get the same script. Like, the same person is writing for all of them. So when Roman Reigns comes across as X, Y, and Z, that ain't Roman Reigns' fault. That's who's writing for him. Yeah. So the guy that they see backstage with them, talking to them, rocking with them, kicking it with them, that's a good guy to them. You know what I mean? So I think that Roman Reigns was sabotaged because they wanted to give him all the good parts of the thing they built and never let him beat him. You know, like him interacting with the Usos is some of the best stuff that he's ever done. It just happened years after the fact. You know, they oh boy, like and
coming off the heels of Cena too. I think that was big. Yes. I think that coming off the heels of Cena, where it was just Cena overload for 15 years, and then it's like people just read the writing on the wall that it was like, oh, this is going to be another Cena. You know, I jokingly, other people jokingly said, oh, it's Samoan Cena. I mean, it's just it's happening, and I think that and to be fair, he didn't do himself any favors with those interviews he had. Mainstream some of those interviews. Wade's talked about it on his show, but he didn't do himself any favors, and I do agree with Wade on this. I think the Punk interview with Cabana, I think, did Roman Reigns some harm too. When Punk basically said, you know, everything was about making Roman look good, I think instantly to a lot of fans, it was just to myself, I was just like, yeah, you know, it was, you could see it. And also, I think Daniel Bryan at that time, everybody wanted it. And and like, it's weird because that shifted from the bad guy in the story was the company, right? And it shifted to Roman. Roman's the bad guy. Roman's the reason why Daniel won't be the guy. Roman's the guy. He's the guy that's preventing Daniel from being. And I think that just all shifted. It was a combination of a lot of things.
Mm-hmm. For sure. Because that goes right there with what I'm saying with the Shield music and the Shield look. Mm-hmm. Like, Punk coming out and saying all this was done in order to make him look good. You know what I mean? Like, it's absolutely that. And us having that inside, you know, look to it all, there's going to be rebellion, you know, especially when, like you said, a Daniel Bryan is out here putting on like the very best wrestling on the planet at the same time. And, you know, again, when I say every wrestler looks better than every fan, pretty much, I think there are people who think in their heart that if Daniel Bryan can get Brie Bella, they could too. I think there are people who think that. I don't think that. I ain't got a shot, but there are people who think that. So there is part of it that's being relatable. Like, the thing about The Rock was, you ain't 6'5", you ain't 275. You don't have movie star good looks. Thing with The Rock was, though, there are a lot of people who believe that they could have been his high school buddy because they were cool. Mm-hmm. And he would have been like, yeah, that's my man. He lets me cheat off his homework. Rock had that about him. Roman Reigns don't got that about him. Roman Reigns has I don't really fuck with you like that about him. And then, which I think is cool, which I appreciate in people. There's a lot of people who don't. You know what I mean? Yeah. So I'm right there with you. It was about feeling like Roman Reigns was handed things and being told that he was handed things. Like, it stopped being just an assumption. And you had somebody in a position who could tell you that, who was telling you that. Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. SummerSlam, let's get into it before we wrap up. Are you looking forward to the biggest party? I don't even know what they're coining it nowadays, but are you looking forward to SummerSlam this year?
You'll never see it coming because it's an RKO.
Yeah.
Looking forward to it, kinda. What I'm looking forward to specifically, I really want to see Drew and Randy. I really want to see that because, to me, you got to find a way to keep that belt on Drew until you can have an audience again. I really feel like that. You know, Randy doesn't need a title. And he keeps proving that because they keep putting him. People have convinced themselves that Randy Orton is one of the greatest wrestlers of his generation. You know, and I'm not saying he's not, but what I'm saying is there's not people saying Randy deserves better. That ain't something people say. They think Randy's treated just fine, regardless of what he's doing. So I don't think he needs that, but man, I think that you got a chance to have a new star in Drew. Randy Orton can sell just as many T-shirts without that title as he would with it. So I think you rock with that. But I'm also really interested, you know, this Sasha Bailey thing, man, has been, it's been brewing for what, 5 years? Like when we went to Royal Rumble, technically, you know, the last, and I'm not making light of your situation, but we know that, you know, that's the weekend the world really changed with Kobe passing, man. That was when things became different, right? So the night before, you know, we're walking to the hotel, we walk right past Sasha and Bailey. And they were as cool as you wanted to be. Hey, what's up? We appreciate y'all, big fans, man. They kept it moving. But those two have been tight for so long. And they're doing this really good work together. What happens between them, whether one of them loses the title or neither of them or both of them, I'm super interested in when we finally get that match, if they can stretch that out. But those two things, Drew and Randy, and then what happens with Sasha and Bailey with Asuka. I am really interested in that. I do feel like I'm going to tune out for a little bit because playoffs are on. But yeah.
So let's go through this card. Aside of, obviously, you talked about Drew and Randy and obviously the Asuka and Sasha Bailey storyline. Is there any other match that you're looking forward to before we kind of run through the card real quick?
Yeah, of course. Street Profits, Andrade and Garza. Only because you know you're going to get the very best wrestling from those four.
Yeah.
MVP and Apollo Crews. I think MVP has just like that's a nigger whisperer. Like he has brought something out of all these black wrestlers that's been there. But I mean, like we talked, it's amazing how you respond when somebody who knows how to talk to you talks to you.
Yep.
Or somebody who knows what you're missing can bring that out of you. It's just amazing. Like, you know, MVP is for these guys with Trav and Dre work for me on the East Coast cast. Like, oh, you also like the thing that I like and you talk about it the way that I do. We can build off that, you know? So I'm interested in that match. Outside of that, I'm thinking the rest of the card. You know, Sonya Deville, Mandy Rose, I kind of wish they wouldn't have that match. Like, we're all in the know enough.
Yeah,
No,
I'm with you.
Not, and granted, for them, it might be therapeutic to go to work. That might be exactly what they need. You know what I mean? But man, it's tight right now. Like we being in this space, I deal with a lot of people who are staying and safe stands, but you know, I got a man who loves Sasha and Bailey and draws pictures of them and talks about them all the time. And knowing him, I know that that's genuine and that's his heart. But you got people who ain't too far from him who want to be all hugged up on the wrestlers' pictures and can you be my girlfriend on Cameo and you know, so
yeah.
I'm worried about that. But I am interested to see how they play it if they go through with it. And then even though we're talking about SummerSlam, I don't know when this is going up, but I hope my Adam Cole kicks a hole in Pat McAfee's face tonight. But also Dominic and Seth Rollins, if for no other reason than they seem to be putting that kid through the fire, man. Like they really they're doing with him what they did with Shane, you know, where, all right, if you want to be down, you're going to do all of this, you know, and so I'm interested to see how that plays out. And Rollins is still just so much at the top of his game. You can put him in any spot on the card. I want to see what they do. Absolutely.
All right, well, let's run through this card real quick. Obviously, the 24/7 title match. You got a winner on that match? Shane and R-Truth?
Shelton Benjamin. They'll find a way. Like,
yeah, they'll find somebody.
I will come out with 48 ninjas and, you know, but probably they just keep that thing going. I think it's really interesting that, like, Shelton is the serious one in that whole story. But R-Truth, I think, finds a way and then loses it later that night. You know how that goes.
Yeah. You literally can name anybody and they'll win the match. I mean, obviously, right? It's the 24/7 title. So, Raw Tag Team titles, Street Profits versus Andrade and Angel. What you got?
I think stick with the Profits. I don't think that the way they're presenting Andrade and Angel right now is super hot. I think that the tension between them is what's going to be bigger when that pays off. But yeah, I think Street Profits keep running, man. I think that they've proven they don't need to be on the show at the same time to be really good. And Montez Ford is just going to be a star. So I think you keep the titles on them for a bit longer until there's a reason for them to split.
Mandy Rose, Sonya Deville.
I think Mandy cut her hair shorter already. I have to go against my man because he was completely like sexist when he said it. Shout out to Wrestling Otaku. He's basically like, nah, Mandy keeps her hair because Sonya doesn't care as much about her looks. Like, she'll be fine. I'm like, dog, like, just because she's a lesbian, like,
right?
What are you talking about? Like, have you seen how women talk about Sonya Deville? Like, but these niggas got to get outside. But I'm going to say Mandy actually loses to do something out of the ordinary if they go through with it.
Interesting. Okay. The first the Raw Women's match with Sasha and Asuka.
So I think Sasha actually wins with Bayley's help.
Okay. Sasha wins. Okay. What about the SmackDown Women's Championship?
I think Bayley loses with the Sasha mistiming.
And you can flip-flop that too. You can either or. Yeah.
Sure. The reason I say it's that way is because I think that we need to see Bayley not being happy for Sasha.
Yeah.
Like, I think it needs to go that way in order for that thing to bubble. Because we've seen Sasha as kind of the heel every time. I think you have to flip it as Bayley being the jealous one.
Okay. Dominic with Ray in his corner versus Seth Rollins. Actually, a match that I'm looking forward to. Probably the most.
Yeah. I think Seth wins, but Dominic gets the respect. Like, it ain't Stone Cold at WrestleMania 13.
No.
But he takes that ass whooping to where they appreciate him after the fact.
Dude can take an ass whooping. He can take an ass whooping.
You might hit me with a kendo stick. You're not taking all them pictures of me, dog. I'm like, nah, no cameras.
Yeah,
you'll be looking crazy out here.
MVP versus Apollo Crews.
MVP wins due to Cedric Alexander's interference.
Okay.
The nigger agenda flies high. With the hard on.
Niggerism in WWE flying high.
Yes.
The Fiend versus Bray Wyatt for the WWE Championship.
I think the Fiend wins. I think that, and again, like, this is somebody who only checks in and out of SmackDown. I don't think Braun's super hot right now. Like, of course you can't see the audience, but like, not even social media is talking about Braun in that way. You know what I mean? I think that the Fiend wins, and because you're still in the closed circuit wrestling, the pandemic wrestling, I think that there's just more stuff to do with him. And then I think that eventually Big E's the guy that finally gets the best of the Fiend because he don't got them same demons.
Yeah, I disagree on that one. I'm a Braun guy. I like Braun. I think he's got his feelings on indie wrestling notwithstanding. I think it's hard to say Braun doesn't have that heat on him right now, just because obviously the lack of crowd and the only thing that gets me with that is just, what do you do with the Fiend after he wins the championship? You know what I mean? It's like, it's weird. Yeah. It's like you don't really have a lot of great challengers for him. I mean, other than Big E, I don't know if they're going to go to that right away. Maybe WrestleMania, which I don't know. I could see it both ways.
My issue with Braun is the same one you have kind of with Bray, though. Like, when he beat Miz and Morrison in a 2-on-1 match for the WWE title, I was like, come on, man. Like, you have to nerf the guy's stuff. You know what I mean? Like, and that's why I thought he was never going to win the title, because I was like, you can't treat a guy like Andre the Giant and then put him in title contention, because then when he gets the title, what do you do?
Mm-hmm.
You know, like, how do you make this a credible thing? And so if they keep the title on him, he has to have a bit closer matches with contenders. That's the only way it works for me.
I think,
but hey, we have the same argument, so I could see it your way as well.
Yeah, like you said, I'm not saying you're wrong. I think with Braun, I think the problem with Braun was I think they should have turned him heel and just made him a killer. See, you got a guy that big and you're going to put the title on him, you got to make him a heel. You know, you got to make him just this unstoppable force that's just going to, like, Braun Strowman, like, this is the same motherfucker that can lift semis, like, essentially, basically. Like, so, like, who the fuck is going to beat him? So I think, let's say, play this, and we'll just play fantasy booking. Indulge me for a second. But if you have Braun retain here, I think you quickly start turning him heel, because I actually think Big E versus Braun works better. You make Braun this asshole heel who's just wrecking shop on SmackDown for weeks and months at a time, and then of course you can have Big E win the Rumble, however way you go about it, and then you have Big E step up, and then Big E beats him. I think that's more. I think to me that works better than Bray. I have the same view you have about Braun I have about Bray, like you said. So to me, Bray doesn't need the title, and it's weird when Bray has the title, because it's just kind of like, what do you really do with Bray as the champion?
Mm-hmm. No, I'm with you.
That's my thing. Yeah. And then of course Randy and I think I know where you're going there, but Randy and Drew.
Yeah, I stick with Drew. Like they brought Drew on First Take. I think that they are. He was with Triple H on First Take. I think they're invested in the guy. I think they know how good he is. I think that you want to have something new when you come back outside, something people aren't used to. And I don't think that Randy Orton in that spot is ideal. So yeah, I think they're going to stick with Drew. I think that's going to be a really good match, though.
Best match on the card?
You got Asuka and Sasha Banks right there, man. It's always hard to go against that, especially if they don't take anything out of it. But hey, that tag match and WWE title are up there. But I'll say, right now going into it, I got Sasha, Asuka at number 1, but Drew and Randy Orton are right there.
Okay. And I can't end the podcast without talking about your boys, the Spurs.
I know it was coming.
Yeah. The playoff streak has finally ended. What was it? 22 straight postseason appearances?
22
Something
years,
crazy?
Man.
Something crazy? Yeah. I mean, first and foremost, look, I'm a Laker fan. I hate the Spurs, but, credit where credit is due. Popovich is just, the fact that he still had that team playing hard and with the opportunity to get into the playoffs. I mean, evaluate your team, because you are a big Spurs fan. Evaluate your team, evaluate this season, what that record means, and I'll ask you some follow-up questions as we go.
Yeah, it was funny. From their perspective, spots on the floor. So kind of that, if you're looking at it from behind the basket, kind of the upper right corner of the key, LaMarcus and DeMar were the top scorers in their respective spaces. So they're still effective at doing what they're doing, but the difference is, eventually your players age out and the young guys got to come in. And, we've been blessed to have a smooth transition forever and ever and ever. And, fumbling on Kawhi broke that, so it's what they tied. I think it was the old 76ers for the most consecutive playoff appearances ever in basketball, which of course is also the consecutive record in any major sport. So, it was going to break eventually, man.
Yeah.
How am I forgetting the title of one of my favorite albums from the Roots? Help me out. No, Things Fall Apart. Yeah. Things Fall Apart. They just do. And so, I think that, like you said, they had the young kids playing, man, right up until that last day. Like I remember last Sunday or Sunday before last, the game that they had to win that they survived. I was like, great. And then, of course, they're eliminated like Tuesday through no fault of their own.
Right.
But I think they were still playing hard, man. You're not going to have it every year. And what happens when you're good every year? Everybody else drafts every year. And so eventually it was going to break. And so hopefully they continue on that upward path.
You think it's time to rebuild? or do you want to? I guess my question is, do you want just a slight retool? You think this team, as currently constructed, still has an opportunity to win a championship? Because that's what it's about. It's about winning championships.
Yeah.
Do you think that this, especially with a guy like Greg Popovich, who's not getting any younger, do you think this is just a slight retool type of thing, or is it just a full rebuild? Like, see what you can get for DeMar, see what you can get for DeMar or for LaMarcus, and just call it a day.
So, of course, like the greedy fan in me, right? And I get to be greedy, damn it. Like, I'm a Washington football fan. Let me be greedy. Let me want things.
Oh yeah, I was gonna let you live on that one. I ain't even had that written down because I was just gonna let you live on that one.
They are atrocious.
On the Washington Football Club.
Yeah, man. Washington FC, from top to bottom, they are just an atrocious franchise. But you watch the playoffs, right? You would love for Philly to have to be like, well, got to keep Simmons, got to keep Embiid. We think we should keep Simmons, and Joel is just floating out there. And he's like, I want to go play for Pop. And all of a sudden, you have the Twin Towers again. I love it. But I think it's a pipe dream, right? I think that I think you just stay the course, man. Like, I'm not a greedy fan. Like, I always tell this story. I didn't sleep good for a year. And I mean, really sleep through the night for a year after the 2013 finals. Like, I just could not sleep. It was always what if. And they come back and do their thing in 2014. And, one of the best nights of my life, man. My late homeboy, John, he passed a couple of months after that. But we were downtown drinking champagne out of a trophy that night. It was amazing. So, once the 2013 finals happened, Manny, nothing in sports is ever going to bother me again, dude. Like, I'm fine.
I feel you.
So if it's a slow rebuild, if they're a 500 team for a couple of years, I will be just fine. I won't have the pressure of living through the playoffs, man.
I wish I had your discipline.
Yeah, right?
Sports bothers me. I wish I did.
Greedy ass Lakers fan. My God.
Hey, man.
But no, when you're used to success, right?
Hey, I'm a Jets fan. So yeah, that's why I say I wish I had your patience.
Yeah.
I don't.
Yeah, like I get to at least say, like, when I was a little guy, I remember winning a Super Bowl. But yeah, for sure. But no, yeah, I think that just stay the course, man. Just draft well. I don't think you need to necessarily bring guys in or out. Now, I do think that one kind of setback, DeMar is not a 3-point shooter, man. And Tony Parker, even if it was just that little corner three, had that in him. Like, he had the ability to pop out there and shoot. So there are 3 or 4 guys on the floor you have to defend because they can do different things. Like, right. LaMarcus does not do the top of the key thing like he used to because the floor is not spaced like that anymore. You know what I mean? Like, you got to have DeMar kind of sitting up there at the top of the key. I do think that I think that Murray's coming along. I think that he's proven to be a serviceable point guard. They got a bunch of kids that, like, got Bryn Forbes out there. Like, there are kids out there.
They got some good young players. They got some good.
So I just think it's time, man, for them to be so close. You're all of a sudden going to have to compete with the Utahs and the Denvers of the world, which wasn't a problem for so long. And then New Orleans is going to be right there next year when that minute restriction lifts and they get a coach who can, coach. No disrespect, but I think they did him dirty. Like, I think that you put your best player on a minutes restriction and say, hey, work with this, and you all of a sudden don't make the playoffs. Like,
Alvin Gentry was not going to be the future. I think any logical fan knew that Alvin Gentry was not going to be there when that team got good. He was a caretaker. And I think that's why you saw so much of the cutoff and the disconnect between the front office and the coaching staff is because, these guys are coaching for their jobs. Like, they knew that. So they're like, yo, you're handicapping me. I get what you're saying. I think David Griffin didn't hire Alvin Gentry. I can't blame him for firing Alvin Gentry. I mean, Alvin Gentry's a nice coach, but he's not the guy that's going to lead that team.
I'd hate to be called a nice coach. But yeah, for sure, right? But no, there are all of a sudden, like, teams that are sitting right there. Like, all of a sudden, Phoenix decided to stop standing in a circle and they can play some ball too. So, yeah, there are teams that were all sitting right there. And so maybe it is going to be trading away DeMar. But I would, I don't think that anybody who matters in San Antonio is thinking that the ship's sunk. You know what I mean? This is what every other team has gone through. It's just our turn. You know, so it's all right.
Yeah, I don't foresee a long rebuild just because I trust who's in that organization. You guys can find diamonds and roughs. I mean, you guys got what'd you guys get with the draft lottery? I think you guys got like the 13th or 14th pick.
I think they're 11. I think it's the 11th.
Or 11th? Okay. You could. I mean, with this draft, I think you can get a good player at 11. So
it's going to be some kids you never heard of. Who all of a sudden going to average 15 and 12. Yeah,
it's typical Spurs, right? Yeah. So I don't see the Spurs going through a long rebuild. I think it is interesting what Popovich does. I think, you know, does he want to continue? I think I see Popovich as a guy that just loves coaching, and I think he's just going to continue to coach and until the next Spurs team. I think he's going to be a lot like Jerry Sloan, where he's just going to keep coaching. He'll go through a couple years where he rebuilds, and then, you know, until they find their Darren Williams or that next guy or that next trio of guys, and then they get good again. So we'll see. We'll see, man.
Absolutely.
Cam, it's a pleasure, my man. Always a pleasure. Always a fire episode when I have you on, man. Before you get out of here, please plug everything going on with the Black Wrestling Coalition, with South Congress, with PW Torch, man. Sell yourself.
Absolutely, man. PW Torch East Coast Cast, every week on the week, Wednesday evening, 6:30 Eastern, 5:30 Central, hosted by Travis Bryant, co-hosted by myself and Rich Fan third. Rich Fan the second. Trey is the baby.
He's coming.
Talking about the weekend wrestling, taking your calls, emails, voicemails, live call-in show every week at EastCoastCast.com. You can see me featured in various places on Pro Wrestling Torch. Most recently, last week on Monday, doing a Wade Keller Pro Wrestling post show. If you're a VIP member for the Torch, you can listen to archives of me doing You, Me, and Wrestling, the show where I ask wrestling fans questions about their fandom. Fan-sided DDT, you can find my writing. I think most recently was an interview with Faye Jackson about wrestlers dealing with boredom and other things during the pandemic, and about what would have been for a lot of different organizations WrestleMania weekend. South Congress Podcast every week. Well, I say every week, typically weekly. South Congress Podcast talking about the weekly goings on in pop culture. Definitely have a show up this coming Monday. Primarily talking about just us dealing with the education system. Myself being a college advisor, my co-host T-Mac being a middle school football coach. Just about how things are going on here in Texas with education and things surrounding it. And then if you're a YouTube guy, you watch YouTube, Botchamania episode 414. You can see me on there reading a passage out of Hardcore Holly's autobiography. So yeah, dabbling in a little bit of everything. And then Black Wrestling Coalition. You can follow BW Coalition on Twitter. Just a collection of Black wrestling adjacent creators, whether it be writers, whether it's journalists, podcasters, merch creators, interviewers, managers, promoters, and just all of us working for the common goal of making sure that it's understood that wrestling is a space for people like us. Feel free to join. There's a Patreon, Black Wrestling Coalition, for $1 a month. You can get your shows, your merch, your art boosted, and all that money goes towards organizations who help us. Still looking for input on where we're going to send the money this month. We've raised over $100 to send out to organizations, so we want to make sure that gets into the right hands. But yeah, so that's a little bit of everything I have going on. Wouldn't be possible without Travis Bryant, Wade Keller at the Pro Wrestling Torch. My man Kevin over at Fan-Sided DDT. Of course, my man Peanut. And then, like I said at the beginning, man, for good brothers like Manny who reached out to me, to let me know that I have a voice that they value, and this thing is continuing to build and build and build. So, again, BW Coalition on Twitter. You can find me, Seahawk, CEEHAWK, on Twitter, on Instagram. Just want to make sure that we are doing everything that we can to do right by the people like us and people who support us. So yeah, that's it.
Awesome, man. And I appreciate you. I appreciate your friendship. I appreciate your what you bring to the podcast game and everything, man. I appreciate you. Definitely, man. It's always love, man. Thank you guys for listening, of course. This show it's dropping on Sunday. Make sure you check out BW Coalition on Twitter. Please support it. It's a great move, man. I'm inspired by it. I think it's definitely needed. It's dope. So yeah, definitely check out BW Coalition. And of course, also go follow South Congress, go follow Cam himself at Seahawk on Twitter, Instagram, etc. Yeah, just follow this man. The man's funny on Twitter. Definitely check him out. Not just wrestling, but everything else in between. Cam, thank you for joining me again. Listeners, as always, thank you for listening. You know where to follow me. You know where to subscribe to the podcast. I won't bore you with details. We'll be back next week with another episode of the podcast. For Cameron Hawkins, I'm Manny Brown. We are out of here. Peace.
Serious.